What is the difference between a beggar and a king and a great being? So when we think of a beggar, we think of someone who is just asking for some scraps. They're settling for the very least amount that they can get by with. And what separates the beggar from the king is the king has a much bigger appetite. He's never satisfied even when he has much. The great being, however, has discovered a satisfaction within himself that cannot be extinguished, that cannot be taken from him. And no matter how much he has or how little he has, he is happy, he's content, he is fulfilled, because he's found that fulfillment within his being, within himself. The world teaches us that we should be like the king. We should keep striving for more, never satisfied, always seeking to gain. And the problem with this idea is that it leaves us forever out of balance, forever grasping for the next thing, forever dissatisfied. And the problem here is that it's never enough. No matter how much you accumulate in your life, you won't feel satisfaction, you won't feel enjoyment. And when you do, it's fleeting. You may have noticed this yourself. So when we go about trying to attain our goals and things, I'm not saying that we should just be satisfied with good enough. Definitely not. Because we're either growing in life or we atrophy. And the more we atrophy, the more we devolve. And we succumb to the forces which are external to us, which are constantly weighing, constantly heavy, constantly closing us down inside. And so I'm not saying we should stop growing, definitely not. But what I'm suggesting is that there is a way of being in which you can discover that the things that you desire don't lead to fulfillment. There's nothing wrong with desire, but when we cling to desire in the false notion that if and when I get this thing, when I reach this attainment, I will then be happy, we often find, much to our chagrin, that this is an endless cycle of suffering that we have entered upon. Because one thing that can be discovered is that we are all, each of us, connected. We're connected to this web, this grid of conscious awareness and energy. It unites us all, and we're actually all made of it. It manifests as everything that is. This entire universe is made of this web of interconnected conscious awareness. And so that which we are seeking, we are actually already connected to. But the very act of seeking it, it causes this web to shape itself into an expression which feels like we are separate, feels like we are disconnected. And so we strive more, we push harder, we seek harder, we try, we stretch ourselves, we constantly are attached to those things which we believe are going to lead us to fulfillment, and yet they never do. Because fulfillment cannot be found outside of ourself. It can't, not really. Not to say that you can't enjoy the acquisition of goals. You can definitely enjoy the process. However, what I am suggesting, this has been my experience, and I've noticed this in many others, is that they're continuously seeking and not enjoying the process. They're continuously moving the markers. As they get to them, they move it farther away. I made $1,000 in a week. Well, now I need to make $5,000. Then I need to make $10,000. Oh, I have a partner. She satisfies me for a little while, but now after being with her for a little while, I'm not so satisfied anymore. I need to find a new partner. And so this happens in all domains of our life. And the disease of seeking is just that. It is a sickness. Because this appetite for more will never be satisfied until we discover the truth that we already are that which we are seeking. The freedom, the fulfillment, the peace of mind and satisfaction that we are seeking cannot be found outside of ourselves. If we think we find it, we'll soon find out that it was a temporary phantom. And when it dissolves, we'll be left with that same nagging sense that no, not yet, not quite enough. There must be more to life than this. We see this with famous people, with actors, with people who have attained to a high level of financial status, and yet they end up oftentimes, unfortunately, developing habits and addictions that cause them to spiral down. We find that there's often this dissatisfaction because I've attained everything. I've reached the highest pinnacle of what life has to offer, and yet still this nagging, aching dissatisfaction within me persists. Now, this is only if I'm alert enough to even know what's going on, because most people will sedate those feelings, push them down, and they just accept that life is just the way that it is. It's just a constant ebb and flow of suffering and brief, fleeting moments of happiness. And this oscillation between happiness and sadness is the hallmark of a life that is not well lived. But there is this truth we can discover within ourselves, this web of interconnectivity that we are. We're made of it. It's not separate from us. But it cannot be attained by the mind. We have to actually go beyond the mind in order to experience it. It's deeper than the mind. Now, when I first heard those words from a great being, I was very perplexed. I said, how can anything be beyond the mind? The mind is all I know. And so, of course, there are various levels of mind, but I'm talking about the thinking mind, the mind that most of us are caught in, stuck in, suffering inside, the realm of our own thoughts, memories, and beliefs about who we are, what the world is, what is meaning, and of course, what we can derive satisfaction from. Because we pursue these objects of the mind, these objects of the world. We want happy thoughts. We don't want sad thoughts. We don't want angry thoughts, most of us. We don't want thoughts that upset us or lead us to grief, so we chase after happy thoughts. But thinking is not the problem. It's the identification with thought that stems from this inability to know ourselves deeply, to know that there is a self within us that is not made of mind stuff. So when we contemplate the question, who am I? What am I? Most of us just cycle these various thoughts. We are our name, we are our birth date, we are our position in life, our status, our careers, our memories. But is that all we are? Or our beliefs? Oh, I'm a spiritual being. But most people who say this, they don't actually know it. They have a strong belief about it. Yes, I'm a spiritual being. I have a soul. If I live a good life and I follow these precepts, I'm going to die and go to heaven. And so they try to live their lives according to this dictate. But again, their lives are often filled with suffering, even though their belief may be very strong. I see people who are very strong spiritually and still they suffer unnecessarily, constantly asking for God to alleviate their suffering, to fix their problems, to make changes in their lives. And again, nothing wrong with that. But there is a way to find this deep peace within ourselves here and now that doesn't depend on external situations changing. But this realization is difficult because the world teaches us everything in the opposite. Everything that we get reflected back to us in our culture tells us, you just don't have enough yet, you just haven't attained that yet. When you get this or get that, then you'll be okay, then you'll be happy. But what happens is, again, the more we believe in that and invest in that false notion, the less we feel connected to this grid, to this matrix of connectivity and consciousness. So the more we strive, the further we get from this realization. The consciousness molds itself according to our mind, according to our beliefs. This doesn't mean that you can just shape the world from your mind, but you can shape your experience of the world. It does get shaped according to your mind, to your belief, to your thoughts. But when you can go beyond thought and experience this grid for yourself, you can know, you will know directly through your own experience, I've already arrived. There isn't anything to seek that I need in order to be okay. And then from this place, you can create, you can continue to strive, in a sense. You can continue to work towards goals, create a vision, live your purpose. And you do it from this place of incredible enjoyment. Have you ever been around someone who was very, very needy? They needed your attention, they needed your approval, they needed to be validated. It's very uncomfortable being around someone like that. But we're all like that to various degrees, almost all of us. And what happens is people pick up on that, right? You pick up on that sense of this person needs something from me. It feels icky. It feels like they're trying to pull from you. And what we tend to do is we pull back. We don't like that feeling. And so it's the same thing when we do this with the world, when we go about the world seeking, trying to grasp, trying to get, trying to find fulfillment by changing the furniture around in the prison that we're living in. And the world pulls back farther and farther and farther, and we feel more and more disconnected, more and more dissatisfied. So we need the next escape, the next vacation, the next drink, the next party, the next relationship, the next level of financial attainment. And again, the beggar and the king are not so different. It's just that the king has a much bigger appetite, yet still he is never satisfied. Be like the great being. Find your satisfaction here and now. It exists. It is within you, but don't take my word for it. But don't discount my word either. Investigate it. It will take time. It will take effort. It will take sincerity. It will take practice. But if you do this long enough, you get glimpses of it. And when these glimpses come, you recognize, wait a minute. I feel something. I sense something. And it's not dependent on anything outside of me. It is me. It's within me. It's what I am. And the more you can attune what that feeling is like, sense and recall that sense into your body so that it remembers it, then it becomes more familiar to you. And you start to get this. And over time, you will learn to live in this state. It's very profound. I'm not saying I'm fully there yet, but those glimpses have turned into extended periods of time. And I find it much easier to get back to that space. Spending time in that space each day, it's so rejuvenating. It recontextualizes your entire life. You find that your work life becomes enhanced. You get more done and you enjoy the process. Those things that used to overwhelm you, block you, you felt so challenged by them, you learn through this experience that, oh, that's just part of life. It's okay. I'm not even bothered by it. I can lean into those challenges without feeling like I'm having to butt into those challenges. Enforce my will. You don't need to do that. You can just persist. And when you just persist with enjoyment, you find that life takes on an entirely new experience for you. And the world responds. Because when we are resonating in this state of a love, a presence, a deep contentment which is not dependent on things outside of ourselves, other people and the world senses this. The grid picks up on it. And the grid will start to shape itself in accordance with it. And it's much more common to experience more and more of the good things in life flowing to you effortlessly instead of trying to chase them. So be like the great beings, my friends. Not like a beggar. Because even a rich man, if he is still seeking more wealth, seeking more satisfaction, seeking more and more to fulfill his never-ending appetite, he is a beggar still.